Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. You've often heard me say that the perspective of media is not objective. The perspective of media tends to go with this kind of corporate narrative of events. Oftentimes they coat this in these ideas of objectivity and everything else, but the truth of it is they have a bias like everybody else because they're human beings. And there's no way of looking at the world without having a filter. There's no such thing as a filterless world. There's always a filter. You're looking at it through some perspective. CNN's perspective on this is kind of interesting and often odd and ridiculous. When the woman goes into Syria, she starts sniffing book bags, talking about that this is, this was the bag that was a chemical strike. Mind you, the chemical is odorless, and you're sniffing something that you're saying has been contaminated with some kind of poisonous gas. It's ridiculous. When they're on this war footing where whatever the United States says, these guys are stenographers that just recount it without necessarily being investigators into discerning what they're saying or not is true, whether what they're saying is true. Chemical strike in Syria, the first thing they say is the president needs to do something about it without asking the question of whether or not it's legal. First question, biggest question should be whether or not it's legal, and what is the fallout going to be from the actions that the United States take. Syria doesn't really engage that stuff. Syria is CNN doesn't really engage that stuff. They are somewhat rah-rah for war. They hate Donald Trump in every other context, but when it comes down to him bombing and killing and massacring people, CNN is on board for that particular thing. I am often enamored when they get hit with real information. Like information that their circuits can't compute. Like, oh my God, this person just said something that is going to fuck about narrative of events. How do we respond to what that person just said? When Tulsi Gabbard tells Jake Tapper that they're terrorists in Syria or that we're paying terrorists in Syria. Now, any normal, sane person, when you're having a conversation with, they would say, no, we're not doing that, are we? That's a normal, sane person. Because a normal, sane person, it digs in them when they hear that the United States government is using their tax dollars to pay other bloodthirsty terrorists that are in somewhere else raping and pillaging and killing, while at the same token saying, oh my God, we care for the Syrians and we want to do something about this war. Sane people hear that and recoil from that. Jake Tapper just gave the government line as if he was a stenographer explaining what the government tells him to say. Let's say Wolf Blitzer, Mr. Oblivious #2 is up for getting a boatload of information. And let's see how Wolf Blitzer deals with the information that he gets. Jake Tapper is one of my first examples. Tulsi Gabbard comes back. She goes to Syria. Jake Tapper hits her in the knees for going to Syria. Tulsi Gabbard defends herself. It makes the point that we're paying terrorists. Jake Tapper flips out. Blah, 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 blah. Stuttering, everything else. Wolf Blitzer has a different take on this. Wolf Blitzer's take, I got to be honest, between the two, I'm not sure which is worse, and I think it's Blitzer's. Look at Blitzer, Mr. Oblivious #2, in competition with Chuck Todd, staring into the camera in his kind of blissful
refueling the Saudi bombers. So we are essentially part of the bombing campaign. We're helping them choose targets, and we are refueling the Saudi bombers that are dropping the bombs. It is said that thousands of civilians have died in Yemen because of this. Yes, we need to have a debate over this.
So for you, this is a moral...
Understand what you've just been told. We, the United States, are assisting Saudi Arabia, a regime that even Hillary Clinton herself, despite taking all of this money from, said were supporting terrorists throughout the Middle East. Don't take my word for it. She said it in her WikiLeaks documents. Now, I say that to say that they're starving, murdering Yemenis by the thousands. They've weaponized starvation and they've weaponized illness with, what's the disease? I can't think of the name of the disease. But essentially eating through the ranks of many Yemenis and killing thousands. That's what they're doing. Now we, the United States, freedom and justice guy, is out here helping them commit this crime and atrocity. Wolf Blitzer has just been told that. Now, Wolf Blitzer is supposed to be a newsman, meaning Wolf Blitzer should have already known that. And you would think that the media would be screaming to the high heavens, why are we helping this terroristic regime? This regime that had influence in the 9/11 attacks. Why on earth are we helping them murder and starve Yemenis? Why are we doing this? This seems like a horrible waste of tax dollars and a horrible waste of what we ourselves, our resources, should be going towards. Any rational human being will howl at hearing that information. Let's hear Wolf Blitzer's response to this.
Issue, because there's a lot of jobs at stake. Certainly, if a lot of these defense contractors stop selling warplanes, other sophisticated equipment to Saudi Arabia. There's going to be a significant loss of jobs and revenue here in the United States.
Is he reading that, or is that the first thing that came to his mind? Is this... Shame! Shame on you! He just told you that thousands of people were being killed with our assistance, starved with our assistance, us helping pick the targets, give you resources and weapons and armaments. And your response to this is, people are going to lose jobs. He's telling you about lives being lost, Blitzer. And your response to this is, hey, you know, if we stop selling these weapons to these terroristic regimes, that people are going to start losing their jobs in the United States. I mean, if they're not going to buy our bombs and planes, I mean, who are we going to sell our bombs and jets and planes to? This is in response to him telling you that the United States should not have a role in murdering and starving Yemenis. I said Blitzer finished. This is embarrassing. This is the perspective that's on CNN. This is objective journalism. How to step out for the war profiteers. Good job, Blitzer, fighting for the war profiteers.
That's secondary from your standpoint.
He said, so this is a moral issue for you. It's both, Blitzer. It's moral and it's good goddamn common sense. You understand that Saudi Arabia and the United States, that relationship has caused destabilization all throughout the Middle East. You add in Israel to this, and you have a fuckload of confusion in the Middle East based on our policies in that region of the world. Our alliance with Israel in and of itself creates massive amount of strife as the Israels have this open air ghetto for the Palestinians. And Saudi Arabia themselves, I hate to keep bringing this up, but some of the people, many of the people who were on those planes on 9/11 were Saudis. Hillary Clinton herself, despite taking money, said that Saudis were spreading terrorism throughout that region of the globe. This is known. This is known. Wolf Blitzer doesn't recoil from this. Wolf Blitzer's issue with what Rand Paul said is, but hey, you know, that's going to hurt jobs if you stop, you know, bombing and starving Yemenis. I mean, fuck, man, you're talking about taking jobs away from Americans. That's secondary to you? Blitzer, in this case, we can find other things to do with that cash. You understand that there are other ways that we can spend money that creates jobs that don't necessarily go into building bombs and jets and planes and missiles and weapons that kill and starve Yemenis. And keep in mind, the context of this conversation had to do with Saudi Arabia's starving and killing Yemenis with our help and our assistance. I'm not going to keep this long. The perspective of Blitzer, for whatever reason, this is on Blitzer's mind. What are we going to do with the weapons contractors? If we stop killing and starving Yemenis, how are the weapons contractors going to sell their weapons and arms? Wolf Blitzer, ladies and gentlemen. Wolf Blitzer. I'll end it at that. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.